For the next 6 months, Malta holds the rotating presidency of the European Union. It's a delicate moment. Europe is firefighting on several fronts, with rising populism, migration and the chaos of Brexit. Malta has set out its policy agenda, which includes advancing the single market, social inclusion and security. Joining me in the studio to discuss Malta's priorities and challenges, Ilse Johansson, Deputy Secretary-General of the European Commission, Maltese MEP Roberta Metsola and Jérôme Chauvin, Deputy Director-General of Business Europe. Welcome all of you. Roberta, migration has been at the forefront of everything that Europe has been criticised for. What's going to change in the next 6 months?
Well, there's a lot of expectation for the Maltese presidency because it is a country that has been at the forefront of both discussions but also experience on migration. I work in the European Parliament precisely on a lot of files that I hope to see a lot of progress from the Maltese presidency. We would like finally to see words that are translated into action. We have had way too many legislative instruments that have led us to nowhere. We have had way too many agendas that are proclaimed as being the be-all and end-all as a solution to the crisis, but the citizens want more, and we're definitely hoping that the Maltese presidency could steer ahead some discussions that are very difficult, but I hope we'll find some success.
What do you think Malta can do that nobody else has done so far? How can these projects, these great plans, actually be implemented?
Well, for many years, when Malta joined the European Union, it felt like a lone voice. Malta was speaking alone when it was facing a very, very huge influx of numbers of persons coming by boat and seeking asylum or refuge in Malta. The situation now is that it's not only Malta facing such a big crisis and a big challenge, and therefore I hope that Malta can use both its experience of such a challenge that has been faced on its shores, but also as identifying what solutions could be found. Can they be found? Well, I definitely hope so. In the Dublin regulation, for example, I hope that finally there will be a step away from this disproportionate burden on member states in the periphery. Malta can be the perfect advocate for that. But it's not only that. The blue card, when the revamping of such an important instrument that will seek skilled labourers in order to fill the labour gaps in our markets, and also the return of migrants that no longer benefit of protection. That is important if we want to have a credible migration policy, and that's what's expected of the presidency.
Ilse Johansson, the European Commission has laid out great plans for migration and it's had pushback from the member states. Is there a strategy to get something more concrete, more amenable, more acceptable to the member states this time around?
I believe we have put forward not only legislative proposals, as Roberta mentioned, but there is a lot of ongoing activities where the European Commission is working very closely together with member states and particularly with the presidency. And this time around, with Maltese particular experience coming from their past, where they know what does it mean when you receive unproportionally burden of people coming to your country, but you need to help them. So we are looking very much forward to cooperate with Maltese presidency in all aspects. First of all, implementing decisions which has been already taken by the Council and Member States. Now it's time really to deliver on the ground. Secondly, working together with Maltese presidency in cooperation with third countries, and thirdly, of course, also advancing on the legislative process, putting in place framework which should be more efficient, more speedy to deal with this problem.
Do you think that the learning curve of migration is starting to mature and the ideas are now solid and this really can be the moment of implementation?
It should be. It should be, and we believe that the Maltese presidency will do its utmost to facilitate this implementation process also among the member states.
Do you think the Maltese have more credibility in this than, say, if it was a Northern European country?
I think each and every member state got different experience. So we saw Slovak presidency, they got different experience. They are a neighboring country with the countries who are receiving a lot of migrants, be it asylum seekers or illegal migrants. So we had Dutch presidency, which are end receivers of asylum seekers. So the added value of EU and rotating presidencies is that everyone is bringing in his own particular experience and practice and ideas how to approach things.
Jérôme Chauvin, single market is big on the agenda this time around as well. What do you expect from the agenda?
Well, as you said, we are living extraordinary times, and what is key for us is that the Maltese presidency focus on where it delivers. And we believe it's time to refocus on some of the pillars of the EU integration. The single market, of course, is one of the pillars. And this is probably the area where you can reap more rapidly direct benefits for the stakeholders community, both companies, citizens and consumers. This is key. We need to regain confidence in the European project, and the single market is the right vehicle. Where we believe the Maltese presidency should focus is the area of services. Services is the area where you have the huge potential in terms of growth and job creation, which should remain one of the priorities of the European Union.
Roaming was one issue that could have been a great headline grabber for the European Commission, and it didn't quite work out as planned. Do you think that'll see the light of day, and the communication strategy for delivering the single market on services will help people fall in love a little bit more with Europe this year?
Well, I hope we will have indeed progress, but since you're mentioning roaming, I think what is more important is investment in digital. The digital area is also key, and Europe needs to foster more investment in digital technologies, including broadband. And where the Maltese presidency can be instrumental is via the needed extension of the European Fund for Strategic Investment. So this is also a key message we have for the Maltese presidency. Please ensure a deal that will secure an extension of FC that can have a positive impact on broadband, digital agenda and single market in general.
Roberta, the idea that we should miss 5G or be behind the rest of the world this time, that would be pretty unacceptable for any of the member states. Can Malta deliver on the 5G agenda?
Well, we certainly hope so. And in fact, these are communicable issues that will deliver to our citizens the fact that we are working on making their lives a little bit better. Because sometimes we spend way too much time discussing things that are too far removed from citizens. And if Brexit taught us something, and what I hope that we will take away is that, that we do not only talk about the single market in terms of whether the UK can remain in or outside the single market, but that it actually delivers real, tangible successes to the citizens who are still in the European Union and who would like to remain in the European Union. I hope that the Maltese presidency can serve in this really, as you said, sensitive juncture of the European Union as the country that is a key member of the European Union, despite a long struggle against accession by the current government into the European Union. Let's not forget, it was the party at the time, the Nationalist Party, my party, that struggled to get Malta in, but that will now understand that this is how we can move forward.
Do you think that the Commission now has a real opportunity to reset its relations with the member states, that the single market was really what Europe was supposed to be about, other than the peace project that it was designed for in the first place, that the single market needs to be completed and that this can be a real driving force for the good things that Europe needs to see?
Definitely, and single market has been always in the very heart of the Commission activities. And when we look on all the proposals which are either in Parliament or on a table in the Council, the leitmotif for Commission is we need to improve lives of our citizens. That's the thing they are asking. I would like to see more employment, I would like to see more investment, more working places and better conditions for competition.
Do you need to invest more in SMEs within the single market as well, given that SMEs really drive employment and not the big companies necessarily?
I think we need to find the right balance in each and every member state. Economies and structure of economies in all the member states are very different. We can't forget industries, but we can't forget service sector. SMEs is a backbone of economies in many, many member states. So we have to look and we have to provide necessary infrastructure in broadband access and things like that.
Sure, Siobhan, the SMEs, how do you see the agenda for SMEs and job growth and innovation really being boosted in the next 6 months?
There is an interesting proposal on the table by the Commission, which is called the insolvency one. It has a very interesting approach because it aims, among other issues, at giving a second chance to entrepreneurs. And I think this is what also we have to change in Europe, the mindset, the approach to entrepreneurship. Like they have in the US, it's already difficult to start a business, especially if you're very small. And I would say it's not just because you failed that you should be condemned, like doomed. Like in the US, you could have a second chance. So this is also a proposal that the Maltese presidency will be discussing, and we believe it could support more entrepreneurship, SME creation. So the approach is right. And again, it's a question of mindset. We need to support, nurture and accompany those entrepreneurs who start a business, not just give them the ability to start a business and then they are there without knowing what to do because they don't have the needed support.
Is this a matter of a cultural mentality, a generational shift that stage by stage needs to be emphasized and embodied within what Europe stands for?
I think it is changing. We see it. I don't know if it's a question of generation, but there is the understanding that we need to do more for SMEs and we need to have a better culture of entrepreneurship in Europe, definitely.
Let's talk about security. Security is tied up with migration, is tied up with so many issues, neighbourhood policy as well. When we look at the security challenges that Europe faces now, Roberta Metsola, what do you think needs to be done right now?
Well, I think more than ever before, we need to ensure our citizens that our external borders are well protected. The minute you indicate that there is a vulnerability in our external borders, then the whole question of Schengen comes on the table. If there is one big success of the European Union is the ability for us to move internally from one country to another, not only as citizens but also as businesses, etc. The minute you threaten our security is the minute those borders go back up, and that is something that we need to continue working in order to make sure that we are well prepared, that we are aware of our threats, that our authorities cooperate better together. We're still very far away from that, as the Brussels and Paris attacks showed us. But if there's one thing that we have done so far, besides re-erecting internal borders, as the French borders have been up since then, is that we've realized that we need to do more. And that means, yes, identifying travel authorization documents for persons coming from outside, knowing who's coming in and who's going out, knowing that the persons who are coming in and applying for protection are genuinely applying for that protection. And I think that the Maltese presidency, again, as it is on the periphery, as a neighbour of Libya and the North African countries where vulnerabilities lie, we need to be at the forefront of using our expertise with those countries and say, listen, there are security threats, we need to address them.
Ilse Johansson, the idea that this is just a problem dealt with within the member states is an old idea. We're now dealing with a neighbourhood policy and dealing with Africa and investing in Africa to solve some of these problems at the root. Do you see this as a strategy which is beginning to bear fruit, or there's much more work to be done during this presidency?
So definitely still things which need to be done, but cooperation with our neighboring countries, particularly in Africa, is in the very heart of our partnership approach towards third countries and also in our neighborhood policy. But just coming back to broader security issues and also on implementation, security and European Border and Coast Guard is one of the great examples where we can see that all institutions together, Member States, Council, Commission, European Parliament, can deliver and can agree on completely new approach towards European borders in a very, very short time frame. And of course it requires the next stage of particular emphasis on implementation and really putting very serious cooperation and analysis of risk analysis in preventive part. And of course, in external part, cooperation not only on development policy, but cooperation building security, cooperation building fighting against terrorism, cooperation fighting about human smugglers, which all brings more security also for European citizens.
Okay, we don't have much time left, but Jerome, let me ask you about the idea of investing in Africa as part of the solution for migration security as well. Europe is getting left behind when we look at what Russia's doing there, what the Chinese are doing in Africa, and we don't talk much about that. Do you see opportunities in this phase now for Europe to really engage with its neighbourhood policy and benefit not just employment in Europe, but a stronger economy and stronger businesses which deal with Africa?
Well, definitely more needs to be done, and we are supporting this kind of dialogue. You know that there is also a dialogue between business communities in those countries, and indeed we believe that it's only by dialoguing, trying to find solution that will improve the situation. Of course, the control of migration is quite a political issue, but business also can bring solution. There are a number of equipment, devices that can support border control, and this is where we would be happy to discuss and engage both with the Commission, the Maltese presidency, the Parliament, to see how we can work together, because this is really an area where we need teamwork. If not, we will not manage.
But do you see investment in Africa by European businesses as part of the solution?
Could be.
Okay, very well. Thank you to our guests today, Ilse Johansson, Deputy Secretary General of the European Commission, Roberta Metsola, Maltese MEP, thank you also, and Jérôme Chauvin, Deputy Director General of Business Europe. Thank you all. I'm Brian Maguire.